All right, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about.
Hey, what you doing?
Oh, just making a video. Where are you going?
Oh, I'm going to a tea party.
Oh, where at?
Oh, up in Boston. You want to come with?
That sounds great, but I'm actually going to grade these quizzes and finish this up. But have fun.
Okay, you too.
Thanks. All right. Anyway, like I was saying, and then that's when we're gonna. Oh.
You would not believe the day I just had.
Oh, spill the tea, sis.
Hey guys, how y'all doing this morning and or afternoon, depending on your block. Now, today we're going to talk a little bit about the French and Indian War. Now, what this was a conflict between the English and French colonists in the New World. This war started out as sort of a branch off of an event going on in Europe called the 100 Years' War, but you don't need to know about that since this is U.S. history and not world history. So, what it was is that both sides got a little too close for comfort, so because of that, war happened. Now, this war was important because it began to show the differences the colonists were having overall with their home countries, as well as creating conflicts between not just Native Americans, but also showing a few other issues. Though, important fact overall though is that the French lost, Britain won, but there were a couple of problems with them winning. Problem number one, wars are expensive, meaning they need money. Unfortunately, Britain at this time was losing a lot of money with fighting with France for just about, a good 100 years. So they were looking at places to find revenue. And they just looked across the Atlantic, and there they found the colonists, and thought, let's get some money from these guys. Now, the British had adopted a policy of salutary neglect. What that means is that the British just let us do our own thing. They didn't care what we were doing, just so long as we weren't causing any trouble. So they didn't really do much in the way of messing with us financially, and we were perfectly fine with that. Until things start turning otherwise. The other thing you need to remember is that the colonies were there just for a source of raw materials for our home country, which in this case was the British, something called mercantilism. And up until the French and Indian War, we were perfectly fine with this arrangement. Because fact is that we were 3,000 miles away from Britain. 3,000 miles, people! And back then there was no internet, no telephones. Heck, you couldn't even do a smoke signal that could be seen 3,000 miles away. So staying in constant contact was a bit of a severe problem. So chances of the British involving with us wasn't that high. So after the French and Indian War, though, all of this changes, and changes for the worse for a number of reasons. And because of that, I'm going to turn it over to my teaching buddy, Mr. Tice, who will explain things from here on in. Mr. Tice, the floor is yours.
So like Mr. Greenberg said, the colonists were not used to having the British control them. So once we have the proclamation of 1763, where the British are basically putting up a new law, they say you cannot go past this line, the line of the Appalachian Mountains, because the British don't want to protect them. The colonists don't really like it. We have a picture here, and it is a metaphor that a parent puts up a fence to keep their kids safe, but the kid sees it as a way of controlling them. We can't leave the fence, we can't leave the yard, we're stuck. So the colonists don't like the proclamation. They get upset about it. And then after the proclamation, we have a bunch of new taxes. Because again, it was very costly for the British to pay for this war. So they started taxing a bunch of stuff. And the Stamp Act is huge because it made colonists have to buy stamps for things. So any paper, playing cards, legal documents, you all had to pay a tax just to use them. And taxes on tea and sugar also made colonists very mad. So we have a few instances where the colonists rebel or they show their frustration with a couple different events. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the Boston Tea Party. To protest the tax on tea, we have the Sons of Liberty, and they disguised themselves as Native Americans and boarded tea boats in Boston Harbor and threw all of the tea overboard. They threw it off the ships, destroying it, making sure that it is, wasted in Boston Harbor because they wanted to protest this tax. Now, you can't really destroy millions of dollars in today's money worth of tea without getting, a little bit of punishment. So the British then blockaded Boston Harbor, said, until you pay us back for all the damages, we're not going to let you have ships in and out and trade other things. So it was a frustration. They took it out, showed their frustration, and nothing happened. Another example we have is the First Continental Congress, and that is where we have our founding fathers meeting, saying, what are we going to do? What can we do about the British trying to control us? They're trying to tell us what to do, and we don't need that. So they actually tried to write to King George and say, hey, as long as you let us have representation in Parliament, we'll be okay. Give us a little bit of an opinion in British Parliament, and we'll be fine. That's all we want. But you're not listening to us, and you're telling us what to do. It's just not fair. And our last example of resistance we have because of the French and Indian War and because of the taxes is the Boston Massacre. Now, the Boston Massacre took place in Boston, and it is called a massacre, but only 5... Do you know how many people died in the Boston Massacre?
All of 5.
Hey Siri, how many people died in the Boston Massacre?
The answer I find is 5.
You're right. 5 people died. They tried to make it sound a lot worse than it was because they want people to be enraged by it. So a little bit about the Boston Massacre. We have some civilians in a town square, and we have British soldiers called Redcoats patrolling. And the civilians were playing around, throwing snowballs because it was snowy and everything, and it escalates, and what happens is we have some snowballs filled with rocks, we have some clubs being tossed at the Redcoats. One thing leads to another, and a rifle accidentally goes off, and boom, we have the Boston Massacre. Now, this painting would circulate, go through the different colonies, and people would see it and read it, and they would hear about the Boston Massacre. Now, for your little field trip today, I was lucky enough to go to a conference in Boston when I was in college, and on some of my time, I was able to visit the site of the Boston Massacre. Now, that is young Mr. Tice pictured at the site of the Boston Massacre as though I were one of the 5 being massacred. So that's all we got for today. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, click subscribe, and check the link in the description below for more information about the Boston Massacre. And as always, have a great day and do your schoolwork.